the Draft National Minimum Wage Amendment Regulations 2026.
Minister, would you be good enough to move the motion?
Thank you, Mr Stringer. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship today. I beg to move that the National Minimum Wage Amendment Regulations 2026 be considered by the House. The purpose of the regulations is to increase the rates of the national living wage and the national minimum wage on the 1st of April. The Government laid these regulations before the House on the 2nd of February. We are committed to making work pay. The passage into law of the Employment Rights Act in December was a proud day for this Government and indeed this Parliament. We are raising the minimum floor of employment rights, raising living standards across the country and levelling the playing field for those businesses who are already engaged in good practice. Our landmark employment rights are set to benefit over 18 million workers in every corner of the UK. And we are pleased and proud to work alongside businesses, trade unions and groups across civil society. Currently and over the coming months, we are carrying out comprehensive consultation with these groups as we deliver these changes together. The creation of the minimum wage remains one of our proudest achievements when we introduced it, and we are continuing to back it with real terms above inflation increases. Before providing the precise details of this year's increases, I would like to pay tribute to the work of the Low Pay Commission. Their diligence, expertise and social partnership model ensure the Government can continue to deliver on its ambitious agenda for working people without causing adverse impacts for businesses, the labour market or the wider economy. This year's national minimum wage regulations will take effect on the 1st of April, as I've already said, subject of course to the approval of this House today. To provide the detail of the changes we are enacting, the national living wage will rise from £12.21 to £12.71. This is an increase of 50 pence an hour, adding over £900 to the gross annual earnings of a full-time worker. This rise of 4.1% is above measures and projections of inflation, ensuring another real terms pay increase for working people as we continue to build towards a genuine living wage. The regulations will also implement increases to the other national minimum wage rates. The rate for those aged between 18 and 20 will increase from £10 an hour to £10.85, an 8.5% increase worth over £1,500 per year. Meanwhile, the rates for those above school leaving age but under 18 will rise by 45 pence or 6% to £8 an hour. I'll give back.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Minister, for giving way. I represent a seaside town, Bridlington, where 5 million visitors come every year and has a fantastically successful seasonal economy. It creates a large number of jobs for young people in the town every summer. Now, is there not a danger with these significant increases in the minimum wage for 16 to 18 and 18 to 20 that will disincentivise local employers for giving young people that first rung on the jobs ladder?
Minister.
I thank the member for his intervention and of course pay tribute to businesses in his constituency, providing those opportunities for young people. Of course the remit was a government remit that we set, and the Low Pay Commission as an independent body provides guidance on those rates to ensure that we can provide that real terms increase for people no matter what their age, and recognising that people on different ages shouldn't be paid for a different rate at the same time, whilst ensuring that they do consider implications for young people to provide that opportunity for first on the job ladder, and we made that clear in the remit too. On the school leaving age, as I mentioned, on £8 an hour, the same applies to the apprentice national minimum wage, which applies to apprentices under the age of 19 or in the first year of their apprenticeship. Finally, the accommodation offset rate, which is the maximum daily amount that an employer can charge a worker for accommodation without it affecting their pay for minimum wage purposes, will increase from £10.66 to £11.10. The Department for Business and Trade published an impact assessment alongside these regulations, and it includes a full equalities assessment and received a green fit for purpose rating from the Independent Regulatory Policy Committee. The Government estimates that this year's national living wage and national minimum wage increases will provide a direct pay increase to approximately 2.7 million workers, with a further 5.1 million workers potentially benefiting from positive spillover effects as employers maintain pay differentials. We are really proud to protect working people in every corner of the United Kingdom. Estimate that 180,000 workers in Scotland, 140,000 workers in Wales and 140,000 workers in Northern Ireland will directly benefit from these changes. It was a Labour government that fought against opposition to bring in the minimum wage when it was introduced in 1999. The headline rate, then for workers aged 22 and over, was £3.60 an hour. As well as more than trebling in cash terms based on current forecasts, This year's national living wage is expected to be 80% higher in real terms than that top rate in 1999. The share of low-paid jobs in hourly terms has dropped from 21.9% in 1999 to just 2.5% last year. It is a testament to the success and effectiveness of this policy over more than a quarter of a century that all of this has been achieved without damage to the economy and the labour market that some people at the time predicted. The work continues, of course, and we will keep making progress on our manifesto commitments in this space to deliver a genuine living wage that works for employers and workers alike. The Government will publish a new remit for the Low Pay Commission in due course. We will ask for recommendations on the national living wage and national minimum wage rates, ensuring our decisions are backed by evidence and consistent with delivering inclusive growth for working people and competitive businesses across the UK. As usual, we will ask the LPC to make its recommendations by October. The Government will subsequently confirm the new national living wage and national minimum wage rates for April 2027, ensuring there is sufficient notice for employers and workers. We are grateful to all those employers, work representatives and other stakeholders who engage thoughtfully with the LPC's consultation each year, ensuring the Government can balance the various concerns appropriately. We are proud to be driving reforms to the employment rights landscape, delivering for workers, employers and the wider economy, and I commend these regulations to the House.
The question is that the committee has considered the draft National Minimum Wage Amendment Regulations 2026. Andrew Griffiths.
Thank you. And, it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, Mr. Stringer. I wish the Minister all the very best. I mean, she's already demonstrated on behalf of her constituents to be an effective performer. But Mr. Stringer, you will have seen many ministers in your time pushed out to defend the indefensible. But very rarely are we caught in the action of passing a statutory instrument in real time whilst the Treasury is peddling and briefing stories of a U-turn before the ink is even dry, before the vote has even been taken, before this has even moved. And why is this? Well, I think colleagues across the House who want the best for our country, want the best for our young people, will recognise that there is a growing crisis of young people being unable to access the work market. The latest figures, Mr. Stringer, I'm told that there were 957,000 young people not in education, employment or training. And whilst this government's inherited that number, it's actually making it worse. And that is before the impact of today's measure and before the impact of the unemployment bill, with which I know the Minister is deeply acquainted. If we look at the overall level of those young people that wish to find work, those that are formally looking for work, and therefore the figure for youth unemployment, 16.1% for young people between the ages of 16 and 24. Those very young people on whom those above inflation rates are the largest part of the bill that's in front of us today. And I'd just say gently, why would any of us in this House be passive, be neutral about passing measures that are likely, by every economist who's looked at this, every business group, are likely to discourage firms from taking a chance on those young people? Now, I often find myself in common cause with the Federation of Small Business. They do wonderful work and represent those smallest, most fragile businesses across all of our constituencies that we wish to succeed on our high streets, to grow. They are where the growth comes from. The same is true of the British Chambers of Commerce, who also have concerns about the approach that this government's taking to those 16 to 20-year-old wage rates, people getting their very first chance at work. But it's much less the case, Mr. Stringer, that I find myself in common cause with the Tony Blair Institute or with the Resolution Foundation, both of whom in the last 48 hours alone have reiterated their concern with the measure that the Minister is advocating, that we all pass and put our hands up and vote this afternoon. They've expressed real concern. This is the Resolution Foundation, Mr. Stringer. This isn't some You know, Tufton Street think tank, this is the Resolution Foundation, that finishing school for young aspirant Labour ministers, overlooking sadly some of the talent elsewhere on their benches, but nevertheless that Resolution Foundation finishing school, the ideological heart of this modern Labour Party, has said that this is the wrong direction to go in and called for a moratorium. And it is precisely that moratorium that if, I'm sure honourable and right honourable members would not dream of taking their phones out under your chairmanship, but if they were to do so and to look at what the Financial Times is saying right now, Treasury sources are briefing that this measure is something that they will be scaling back as part of what I think, Mr Stringer, is U-turn number 16, but it's very hard to tell. Being a bear of little brain, I can't always fully keep up with the number of U-turns that this government has making. And I'll give the final words to the author of this strategy herself, my interlocutor during the passage of the 300 pages 1970s red tape job-destroying unemployment bill, the member for Ashton-under-Lyne, who said very recently, albeit after leaving government and then beyond the influence perhaps of the Treasury bench, she said, I think we've got to recognise, and she was talking about this overall challenge of employment as well as our wider economy, those coastal businesses, seasonal businesses, hospitality businesses who are right in the front line and where so many young people who we're all here to represent in a non-partisan fashion, so many of those young people, including myself, had their very first shot at a job. And so the member for Ashton-under-Lyne said, I think we've got to recognise it's not even a double whammy, it's not even a triple whammy. I talk about the challenges on business rates, the challenges on VAT, and the challenges of the minimum wage and the living wage going up. I'll give right honourable member those final words, but I do hope that the Minister will update us as to what the latest thinking is of the Chancellor on this measure and how she thinks about this very difficult challenge of young people having their first shot at life, their first opportunity. Thank you, Mr Stringer.
Thank you, Mr Stringer. And I just wanted to say a few words on this bill because, first of all, I'm generally delighted to see the Honourable Lady in her place as the Minister. I congratulate her on that achievement. And she's been sent here today to do a very straightforward DL in raising the minimum wage levels. But as my right honourable friend has outlined, the situation is becoming more complex. So I thought it was just worth putting down a few words about what we're seeing in the real world in relation to this. My constituency, Wetherby and Easingwold, does what it says on the tin. Wetherby and Easingwold are two market towns. And I have other towns in Tadcaster, in Boroughbridge, and lots of villages surrounding them. But in those towns, there are lots of small businesses. And those small businesses have stopped hiring as many young people as they used to. It'd be wrong to say they've stopped hiring young people, but they've stopped hiring as many young people. Because to compliment and say that wages are rising for the poorest paid is in itself a good thing to say, but it's not taking into account the other tax changes that have taken place. It's not taking into account the tax changes around rates. It's not taking into account the tax changes around employers' national insurance. And all these things added together has resulted in businesses cutting back on the number of young people working there. And I remember my very first job at WH Smith, and I was still at school. I went for a Saturday job. I actually ended up getting a job every day of the week and doing the newspapers and magazines before the shop opened. So I would get up at 5:30, leave WH Smith at 8:30 and go on to school. Now that was a real experience for me as someone who was 17 to then 18 years old to actually have to have that discipline and go to work in the real world. As often said to people, I've never had as much disposable income as I had then. And I'm sure the pubs and clubs of Gravesend were very welcome to it. The experiences a young person can gain from short-term employment, Saturday employment, part-time employment during school holidays, it is absolutely vital. And I fear that looking just at the raises in minimum wage and saying raising how much people can earn a year doesn't take into account the other pressures on business. And for all of the importance that is to raise people's wages, if the jobs aren't there, it's not actually achieving something. I just wanted to draw on one other thing, Mr Stringer. I will give way on that point, yes.
Thank you. I think, I'm happy that you're giving way on this point. Running a business for the last 21 years on the high street, I can safely say that we haven't had static jobs around for at least the last 10 of them, and that hasn't been to do with the national minimum wage. That's been a lack of support from government over the last 14 years for hundreds of ideas that came forward and numerous consultations that were never acted on. To say now that it's the minimum wage that's creating that issue, would he agree that that's a bit of a leap of an idea?
Well, I'm grateful to the Honourable Lady because I think she sort of illustrated the point I'm making, that it's not about the minimum wage, it's about the other taxes that have gone alongside the minimum wage and have put huge amounts of pressure on businesses. So to actually raise minimum wage, a lot of people say, well, that's great, it puts more money in people's pockets, but it's the other pressures at the same time. I could name 5 businesses in just one town in my constituency who did hire young people on a Saturday to work, and they have reduced the number of people they hire. And that's because of the other costs. But just to move it on briefly, Mr String, because I'm sure we weren't expecting to be here too long on this DL. The one thing which I wanted to draw on, and my right honourable friend has just referenced the right honourable lady for Ashton under Lyne. And I raised this in second reading of the Employment Bill. Now, I don't know how many honourable members opposite stood in election before 2024. But in the elections before 2024, it was in the Labour Party manifesto, it wasn't in the 24 one, but it was in the Labour Party manifesto that they would ban unpaid internships. Now, I have fought to ban unpaid internships in every single term I have been elected in this place. And I have never got anywhere. And every Prime Minister who came to this dispatch said, I don't see why we're not doing it, and then it didn't happen. But surely, Mr Stringer, when I brought forward an amendment to the Minimum Age Act to include unpaid internships, that you would have thought a government who keeps talking about paying on people, getting them on the ladder, doing things for them, would have brought this simple minimum wage, whether it be the apprenticeship wage, whether it be the youngest wage, but a pay wage, into this act for people who are exploited. Anybody who works longer than 4 weeks is adding a value to a company no matter what anybody says. And being asked to go and work, maybe in London for a year, have to sort out your own accommodation, your own costs and not get paid, is an exploitation. So I'm afraid I push back again on the government and say they, Mr Stringer, are parroting that it's great what we're doing for people because we're raising the minimum wage, but it doesn't take into account the other tax rises that have put pressures on business, and it doesn't actually do anything to move forward young people who are missing out on opportunity because they don't have the ways and means to work for free. And I think that the government should take a really close look at itself, that they've parroted and talked about their employment bill, but they've come here today to boast about rises in the minimum wage, but have not made sure the whole section of young people actually get paid for a day's work. My party, Mr Stringer, has always believed in work should pay.
Minister, to respond, please.
Thank you, Chair. I thank the Shadow Minister for his contribution and for his kind words at the introduction and the start of his speech. However, I'm not sure I'm defending the indefensible. I'm defending the decision to uplift our national living and minimum wage. On the 1st of April, when these regulations come into effect, we'll be delivering a direct uplift of around £900 for a full-time worker on the national living wage and £1,500 for someone on the minimum wage for 18 to 20-year-olds, and that is not insignificant. He did mention the 18 to 20-year-old national minimum wage rate, which I will turn to. We are absolutely committed to and determined to raise living standards for working people and ensure that genuine living wage. And as part of that, in our manifesto, we've made clear of our direction. And when recommending the 2026 youth rates, we did ask the LPC to consider the risk of employment impacts, whilst also balancing these risks with the ambition to remove the discriminatory age bands for adults. The LPC carries out extensive consultation, commissions new research, considers a range of economic, labour market and business data to assess the impact of the national minimum wage on young workers. And the LPC concluded there is no clear evidence the recent increases to national minimum wage have affected young people's employment overall, and that is coming from the LPC. They assess that a range of factors are driving recent trends for young people, including in sectors they are more likely to work in. Now, in terms of what the government's doing about the situation and the figures that the Shadow Minister alluded to, at the budget we announced more than £1.5 billion of investment over the spending review period for employment and skills support to deliver a youth guarantee and to reform the growth and skills levy for young people. I agree with the significance of jobs for people at a young age, and I thank the Shadow Minister for sharing his experience. It's one that I can sympathise with too for my journey and my career, and the skills that you learn in those first jobs are absolutely invaluable. That's why the Youth Guarantee is so important. It will provide 16 to 24-year-olds across Great Britain with enhanced support to move into work or training, including improving employment support through expanded youth hubs and increased support in job centres. And I've seen the impact of that in my constituency. The Youth Hub has absolutely transformed the lives of over 70 young people in the year that it's been running, and it's clearly of significant benefit across the country, creating nearly £300,000 additional work experience and training opportunities. I will give up.
Thank you, Mr. John. Great for the Honourable Lady. Does the Honourable Lady agree that unpaid internships should be banned?
I thank him for his, and again, I know he's campaigned this for a number of years. I am going to come to unpaid internships very shortly, so we'll respond to him with an update on our work in the department. Just to finish on 18 to 20-year-olds, Chair, from 2026 to 27 to 2029, we've committed over £500 million to youth programmes and support, and I want to touch on this because it's really important in that wider package of how we're looking at opportunities for young people and employment prospects. Over £60 million on a new Richer Young Lives Fund to improve activities in youth work, 15 million in youth workers, 70 million to rebuild and improve local youth services, 350 million to refurbish or build up to 250 youth facilities, 22.5 million over 3 years to create a tailored Richmond offer in up to 400 schools, as well as the work that we're doing on apprenticeships training that will be completely free for SMEs who hire eligible young people aged 16 to 24. So I did want to spend some time just responding to that because it is a clear government priority and we are working at pace on it. I thank the member for raising unpaid internships. I know it's something that he's been campaigning on for a number of years and pay tribute to all his work in that. He will know that we ran a call for evidence from the 17th of July 2025 to the 9th of October 2025. We had hundreds of responses, which was brilliant to see, and we published our response last Friday, committing to 3 key actions to tackle non-compliance: reviewing and expanding national minimum wage guidance, strengthening enforcement through the new Fair Work Agency, and bolstering communication so young people are aware of and understand their rights. That's a significant bit of work and something that we are committed to reviewing and keeping an eye on. I know he will be too, and will be holding us to account in that, and I thank him for it. To conclude, Chair, this legislation here today represents clear, discernible progress towards our manifesto commitments of delivering that genuine living wage and expanding the eligibility for the national living wage to all adult workers. It's not entirely clear if the opposition are voting against this legislation today, but we will see, stopping these 2.7 million workers perhaps for getting a pay rise. But to that end, I extend my thanks to ACAS, who offer impartial and expert assistance on employment issues, and HMRC too, who enforce the minimum wage on behalf of the Department for Business and Trade. We're also confident that the creation of the Fair Work Agency, set up from April this year, will ensure a more effective, less fragmented enforcement system. And in closing, I would again like to thank the Low Pay Commission. We are grateful for their expertise, their collaborative social partnership model that brings together the perspective of workers and businesses. The minimum wage is one of the most successful government policies in recent decades and remains one of the cornerstones of our plan to make work pay, and I commend these regulations to the House.
The question is that the committee has considered the draft National Minimum Wage Amendment Regulations 2026. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. No. Division.
Don't cause division now.
Are we divided? Are we divided?
It was a miscommunication from my whip.
That's quite simple.
To be fair, it was just consideration of the deal. It's not actually principled obstruction.
I take it I misheard that.
Gosh.
So I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order, order.